All right. It's another edition of Hadeen Does Math really late at night at home without a calculator. So let's see how this goes. Let's see. This goes back to the beginning of chapter 1, and so it's going to be the basic stuff we did on the quiz. Find the slope. Okay, that's a straight up y2 minus y1 kind of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So this is going to turn into adding on the top, because minus and minus. And on the bottom, it actually turns into, oh, except for that 6 in today's math. And on the bottom, it actually turns into both staying negative. And so I get negative 6/7. So far, this is going slick. Next, I'm looking for the equation in slope-intercept form of the line in part A. Okay, so I personally think the easiest way is to start with point slope. So y minus, and I can pick either of these points. It doesn't really make a difference. I don't know, I guess I pick this one. Y minus -1 will turn into +1 equals the slope, which is this hideous number that I just got, in front of x minus the x value. So if I chose this y value, I have to use the x value that goes with it. So now I get the joy of distributing negative 6/7. So I have y plus 1 equals negative 6/7 x. And then here the negatives will cancel. Top number becomes 24, bottom number becomes 7. And I need to take away a 1, but I'm going to write that 1 as a 7/7 because then it has a common denominator and I can combine like terms. So to do what it says, which is write the equation in slope-intercept form, I get this, and then these two are alike, and they become 17/7. So, like I said, 2s and 3s aren't always your answer in honors pre-calc. All right, identify the question every time. Like, what is it asking you to find? What is the slope of any perpendicular line? Okay, so that's going to be asking for opposite reciprocal. So since that was negative 6/7, I'll be looking for positive 7/6. I flip it over and I change the sign. What is the equation in point slope form? Now, because this next test is not multiple choice, at least not all of it, you're going to have to pay attention to the instructions and do what it says. If you write your equation in a different form, you're not following the directions, and you're trying to prove to them that you know what point slope form is. And you're supposed to do the line that is perpendicular, so that's a key word, to the line in part A, but also passes through for -1. Okay, so this is my x1 and my y1, and I need the slope to be 7/6. So point slope form is actually quite lovely. I probably can't fit it on that line because I write messy, so I'm going to write it right down here. I'm going to take y minus the y value that's on the line, so in this case minus and negative will turn into a plus, equals the slope, which has to be 7/6 because it's perpendicular to the one above, so we actually are using the slope from part C. And then that goes in front of the parentheses that have x minus the x value. And we don't distribute or do any of that unless we're trying to get slope-intercept form, but we're not. It says point slope form. So you're actually done, and you leave it like that because that's what it asked for. Okay, excuse me. So all of these are going through this point, and then it's just giving you a variety of slopes. It doesn't say what form to put it in. So I guess I would start by going, okay, y minus the y value, which turns into plus because minus the negative right here, equals m times x minus my x value. And so that's point slope form. If I wanted to distribute the 2/3 and get this into slope intercept, I'd have y plus 1 equals 2/3 x minus 8/3. And then I'd have to take that 1 away, but I would write it as a 3/3. So this is point slope form. if I want it in slope-intercept form, I'm going to have y equals, that's gone, 2/3 x, and then -8 minus 3 more is going to be -11/3. If it said point slope on the test, I'd write it like this. If it said slope intercept, I'd write it like that. So know how to go back and forth between the two. Okay, perpendicular to 5/4 means I'm going to have to use an m value that's flipped over and negative. And then I will do my point slope. So y minus -1, because I'm still using the same point, equals -4/5 times x minus my x value. So that is point slope form. If I need to go into slope intercept, I'm going to go ahead and distribute the -4/5. And then here, thinking of that as 4/1, the negatives cancel and it becomes 16/5. Then I have to move this 1 over, but I'm going to subtract it as a 5/5 rather than a 1, because 5/5 is 1. But that way I have a common denominator. So I get -4/5 x, and then these last two are both just constants, so they go together to be 11/5. Okay, horizontal lines, if you think of a horizontal line, the only axis it's going to cross is y, and then you write it as equals a number. So in this case, if y has to go through this point, y has to equal -1, or it won't hit that point. Because if you think about where 4, -1 is, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, down 1. So I would need my horizontal line to be right here at -1 in order to hit that point. Part D is asking me, what about a vertical line through that point? Well, the vertical line would have to come right down here to go through it. Vertical lines only cross the x, so that's the only letter you see, and it will equal the place where it crossed. I can look up here and see what it has to equal because it's in my point. So horizontal and vertical lines actually don't have work. You just have to know how it relates. Find the equation of the line passing through the point 6, 1, I think that says. Perpendicular to this. Okay, so it's giving me all the information and it's asking me to write it in different forms. And you're going to just start in this form, distribute, move a number, then you'll be in this form, get your x over to the left, and then get rid of any fraction coefficients. So let's see how that looks. First thing I have to do is get point slope form. Well, first I need the slope then. So here, to get the slope, I'm going to just rearrange this until it's in slope intercept form. So I'm getting the 3y alone by moving the 2x over through subtraction. And then I'm going to divide everything. And the only thing I care about from that entire equation is right here. I'm looking for the slope. So the slope that I'm going to be utilizing is going to be, what did I find? -2/3. So to write it in point slope form, I have the point they gave me and now I have the slope. So y minus the y coordinate equals your slope times x minus your x coordinate. And I leave it. For slope intercept form, I always do the same math. I'm going to distribute that fraction or that slope value to everything inside. So I get, in this case, -2/3 x plus, and then 2/3 times 6 is going to turn into 12, excuse me, 2/3 times -6. Negatives cancel. I get 12 over 3, which is 4. And wait, why do I have? I'm looking at the online key right now, and Miss Arnold has something different. Okay. Because I didn't read the instructions, folks. That's perpendicular too. So because I got a slope of -2/3, I need to use a slope of +3/2. That's what happens when you start your homework too late. So I just missed this right here. I should have highlighted it right from the get-go. Now I'm going to distribute my 3/2. I'm doing the same process. I'm just going to use the correct numbers. So this is going to be a 3/2 x. And this will turn into 18, 6 times 3 on the top, and then 2 on the bottom. So 18 over 2 is going to be a -9. So I need the y alone, so I add that 1 over. And so in slope-intercept form, I will get 3/2 x and then -8 because of the 9. -9 plus 1. So point slope, slope-intercept. And now to get this, I just have to make sure the x moves over to the left. So if I started with this, first of all, I don't want to have a fraction. So since this is over a 2, I'm going to go ahead and multiply the entire fraction, or excuse me, the whole equation by 2 over 1. So I get 2y equals here, that would turn into 6 over 2, so 3x, and then here that's going to be -16. And then dividing everything, oh no, I don't need to divide it, I'm doing a standard. I need to move that guy over. So I get -3x plus 2y equals -16. Okay. I'm going to, for now, stop after this. Mostly because I'm so tired. Maybe I'll stop here because that makes more sense. So first of all, let's find the domain. Domain right now means that we have to think of 2 restrictions, even roots and zeros on the bottom. So this at first looks like it's going to have a restriction, but it's a cube root. That's not an even root. So that's going to be all reals. And we write that now because it says in interval notation, plus we're practicing that for calculus. This is all reals. 5 has a denominator. And that means that I have to be careful. Like in this case, you can't let x equal -5 because it will generate a 0 on the bottom. So in a number line, that would be like, you can use any number in the whole entire universe that you want, except not -5. So in interval notation, that's going from -infinity to -5, not included, picks up on the other side of -5 and goes to infinity. This next one is an even root. And so I'm looking at what's underneath it. Because when you have an even root, whatever's underneath there, you have to figure out where is that going to be greater than or equal to 0. So this one's tricky, but think about what you know. You know that it is a parabola. And we need only the parts of the parabola that are greater than 0. If I added this over to the other side and then square rooted it, I would end up with x like equaling, in order to be 0, either positive or -5. So that means that if I drew this parabola at 5 and -5, it's going to hit the graph. This is a positive x squared minus 25. So it's going to open up, and it's asking, or it needs me to know, where will that be positive? Well, it's positive here and positive here. Because remember from our analyzing graphs that simply means above or below the x. So that's why if you look at the answer key, it goes from -infinity to -5. And it actually is going to be greater than or equal to that. Because you need it like from up here. You need it to be greater than or equal to 0. Since it is 0 at that spot, I go ahead and use a bracket. And then I need this part over here on the right, which is going to be 5 up to infinity. This next one's a bit tricky, but it's got this. And actually it has like a restriction on the top as well. So you have to think this through. There's not enough room. Up on the top, I need x minus 2 to stay greater than or equal to 0. So x has to be greater than or equal to 2. That is one of my restrictions. You always have to go with the least restrictive, or like, yeah. So, you know, if you're out with a bunch of friends and one of them's not 18, you can't go to the casino because you have to go with the least restrictive, like the one that restricts it the most. The bottom has some restrictions too. X can't be 0 because that would make this part 0. And x can't be positive or negative 3 because that would make this part 0. So there's all kinds of things that you can and can't use. If I get confused, I usually use a number line representation. So this has to be true. I have to be able to use only x's greater than or equal to 2. So on my number line, if this is 0, I'm only going to be using numbers from here up. But then I have to honor the restrictions from down below. X can't be 0. Well, that would be over here. So I already can't use that because that's not in the part that works on the top. And that it also can't be positive or negative 3. That one doesn't matter. This one does. So what happens is I only can use from here to here between 2 and 3 and then on to infinity. So I would write that as starting at 2, and that's a solid dot, going until 3, but since that's what I can't use, x can't be 3, I got to keep that open. Then I pick up on the other side of 3, and I go on to infinity. Here, I need what's underneath the radical to stay positive, so, because it's an even root. I need 5x plus 4 to stay greater than or equal to 0. So just solving that for x is greater than or equal to negative 4/5. So if you think about, okay, that's going to be like from wherever negative 4/5 is on over to the right. So this end is or equal to, so the negative 4/5 is included, and over to the right would be written as to infinity. So you're thinking about like what the x's can't be, but ultimately you describe in the answer what they can be. All right, so we have 2 rules, 2 categories, and the numbers split at 0. So I like to go and think, okay, this is where the rules changes. This is included, this is not. This top rule is going to be for x is less than or equal to 0. So that's over on this side. Then the bottom rule is for x is greater than 0. So that's over here. Both of these are lines. And you can kind of graph them however you want. If you feel pretty good about your math intuition, you could look at this and be like, okay, this starts at 3 on the y. And I'm looking back over here right now and I see, oh, that one's the one that's included on this x equals 0 line. And then this I can do two ways. It has a slope of 1, but that's up from left to right. I also could plug in a number. Like, what if I tried -1? -1 plus 3 is 2. So -1, 2 is one of my points. What if I put a -2 in? -2 plus 3 is 1. So I'm going off this direction, and I do indeed have a line that goes up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, and hits the y-axis at 3. For the second category, x greater than 0, meaning over here, I'm using this bottom rule. I still plug in the breaking point, which is 0 here. So 2 times nothing is nothing minus 1. So this would be at -1, but that one's open because it says x is greater than 0, not or equals 2. And then since I'm going off to the right, the easiest thing for me to do is look back at the original equation and just go, oh, the slope is 2. So from here I'll go up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, and just draw my line in. To find f of 0 that it's asking for here, that's saying when you put in a 0, what do you get out? 0 falls into this category, my friends. It is less than or equal to 0. So I need to plug it into that rule. That's the category where 0 goes. So I'd end up with 0 plus 3, and my answer would be 3. Here, the number -1 is less than or equal to 0. So that also gets plugged into that top rule, and it gives me an answer of 2. All right, let's do this one and then call it a night for me. I'm going to do this part in red. I'm going to do this part in purple, and I'm going to do the bottom part in blue. I'm going to pay attention to my categories. I have 3 rules, 3 parts, 3 pieces, 3 categories, whatever you want to think of them as. So this bottom one, x is greater than 2. So here's 2. And to the right, my rule is 3. That seems complicated, but it's actually super duper easy because 3 simply means a horizontal line of 3. I'm changing this notation to being open because it says x is greater than 2. So I go to 1, 2, 3, I put an open circle, and I go off to the right as a horizontal line. Because keep in mind, this means y equals 3. In the middle, what do you know about this function? Well, I know that that's a parabola. It's opening up, and it's shifted down 4 from its normal position at the origin. So I already know that I'll go down 1, 2, 3, 4. What if I plugged in a 1? 1 squared is 1, minus 4 is -3. That'll have a mirror image over here. And then what if I plugged in a 2? 2 squared is 4, minus 4 is 0. So I'd be right here. Now, if you look at this one, they both are or equal to, so this one is where the dots come in. Open circle here, and then open circle at the top. And I'm just looking at, like it says, x is less than, not or equal to. That's how I decided it was not included. So I already know this is going to be a parabola, and so I'm going to go ahead and connect just this part because this is a piecewise function, and I'm only going from 2 on the x to -2. And then at the top, I have my third piece or rule for any x's less than -2. So over here, the rule is x plus 3. And you can just plug in whatever numbers you want, but I always start with the breaking number, and I'm going to use an open circle. So if I put in that -2 here, -2 plus 3 is 1. What if I put in a -3? -3 plus 3 is 0. You should be able to look at x plus 3 and just know that that thing is going to be a line. And so you can draw in that linear piece. Let's get rid of all this writing for now. All right. So this is asking you, when x is -2, what is the y? Well, here is the category that actually includes -2, so there is my rule. So I would have to say, what's -2 squared minus 4? -2 squared is 4, minus 4 is 0. In the bottom one, f of 3. What category does 3 go into here? 3 is not less than -2. It's not between -2 and +2. It goes right here. 3 is greater than 2. And when you're in that category, your outcome is always 3. Okay, that is enough. Calling it a night. We'll call that day 1. There is plenty left. So I will get after making this video for you so it's available to you. But I got to call it a night. Good night, my friends. Bye.